Welcome to another edition of International Soccer Break. I'm your host, Sahil, here with Rahi and Roy. We are continuing our analysis of each group of the Copa America. We are starting today with Group C. Group C, which happens to be the group that has a certain United States of America.
That's correct. The Eagles have landed, my friend, in
Yes.
Group C.
Say can you see, Roy?
Yeah, that's what the song
This
is.
is going to be a rough
after.
show. I
Group
can already
C.
tell. But let's start breaking it down. Let's get into the group again. Like I mentioned, Group C or Grupo C, as we like to say here in the Copa America version of this.
Okay.
But yeah, let's break it down, boys. Here's the group.
Grupo
Look
C.
at that. Look who's on top right there.
For
those of
this is
you
how it's
who
gonna
don't know what
finish. This is how the group is going to
Unidos-
finish, damn it.
If for those of you who don't know who Estados Unidos is, it is of course the United States
Canada.
of America.
The USA, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So we have Uruguay, we have Panama, we have Bolivia. So let us kind of break it down. But before that, just overall thoughts from the group, boys.
Opportunity. You got to say. It's an opportunity for the U.S. It's certainly an opportunity for Uruguay as well. I think it's a good group for both these teams. It's a good way for both these teams to start the tournament. Both teams that are exciting in exciting moments. I think it's going to be a very interesting group. I think it's going to come down to that last game to see who avoids Brazil in the next round. Great chance for both the U teams, Roy, in this group.
Yeah, it's an interesting group. We have South America's arguably worst team in this group in Bolivia. And Bolivia wins when they play at their 50,000-foot elevation stadium in La Paz. That's when they win. They will not be playing at elevation here. So I don't know if they're going to get out of this group, but massive, massive opportunity for USA to cement themselves as a top team in the world. If we could get out of this group in first over a team like Uruguay, who is considered a top team in the world, a top team in South America, I believe they're in second right now in CONMEBOL qualifying, then this will be beautiful, man. I'll be singing the national anthem every day at work.
It's teams 12 and 11 in the FIFA ranking. So that's how tight these two teams are in terms of the way they're viewed in the world.
Yes.
Neck and neck.
But before we get there, let's start with everyone's favorite team, Bolivia. So Bolivia right now is not on the bottom of World Cup qualifying. Peru is because Bolivia beat them 2-0. So Bolivia is coming off that high. I'm just kidding. No, but it's different. This is not the Bolivia teams of the Platini Sanchez in the 1990s. This is since then it's been mostly sad story for Bolivia, and they just had their most famous player of recent years, Marcelo Martins, retire from the national team and retire from soccer in general. So now, not a lot of household names on there, guys.
No, not very many. The majority of this team plays in Bolivia itself. I can say confidently, I haven't seen much of the Bolivian league. I would venture a guess that not many have, but that's okay because honestly, Bolivia always impresses in their technical ability. All these players are always extremely technical. They don't play for big clubs. They're always skilled. It's just that in certain moments they tire. I feel the game gets away from them, but you'll see some beautiful stuff from them. For periods of the game, you'll see some beautiful touches. They just don't have it completely as a team, and they don't have the experience at this level.
So this is more about the way I see it is Bolivia is similar to a team like El Salvador, is similar to a team like Honduras, who historically teams like USA, teams like Canada struggle against because of how quick they are, because of how technical they are. They're in great shape. Bolivia is going to come as the most in shape team because of where they're from. They play at elevation, so it's not going to be too hard for them to play a full 95 minutes in these games. So because of their technical ability, because of their quickness, they don't have a star. they will give teams trouble. They will give teams like USA trouble. They won't give South American teams trouble because they're also very technical. But we struggle against technical teams. And what are they going to do against the US? They're going to do
We
what
can't
the
have
US
trouble.
hates,
We can't have
which is
trouble
bunker.
against Bolivia. We just can't.
I think we'll have some trouble. We have trouble against Honduras. We have trouble against Panama. We have trouble against El Salvador. We tied El Salvador a couple times in the past year and a half. So I don't see how Bolivia is different from a game like that. They're similar teams, similar strengths.
So let's see. Let's now go to a team that has given the U.S. trouble in the past, which is Panama. It's an interesting dichotomy. I think, with this particular team, because sometimes you see this team and they'll beat the U.S. and they eliminated the U.S. obviously from the Gold Cup. Granted, it was a C team from the U.S., but still they eliminated us from there. But then you go out and you see a game like the last one Panama played in the Nations League, and lose to Jamaica in a game that Jamaica kind of felt as the better team for a majority of periods of the game. So it's a very kind of hot and cold team.
They have an incredible manager. I think he's a great manager, one of the best managers in the region, I think. And they have an incredible player. Karski, I think, is an incredible player. And beyond that, I mean, they have some talent. They've been able to beat us at times, but never in a game where we're playing our A team and it's a big moment, right? They beat us in sort of the B Gold Cups from time to time. Look, Panama has a good chance to get out of this group if they're able to pull something against either the US or Uruguay. It's a decent opportunity for Panama. But I don't see them, they're not more talented than those two teams. But the coaching is what elevates them, Roy, for me.
Yeah, Roy, you watch the MLS obviously very closely, so you see Carrasquilla quite often.
Yeah.
And so what's your take on him and Panama and his impact and all that stuff?
I went to the LA Galaxy Houston Dynamo game. I had a nice front row seat there. Great cushion on the seat as well. So I got a nice view of Carrasquilla, and I was watching him because I know the US is going to be dealing with him shortly. And what he has is he's extremely technical. He's very hard to deal with if you're a defender because he's so savvy of space. He's hyper aware of his surroundings. It's really hard to take the ball off of him. But most dangerously is he's the guy that's going to play that final ball. He's the guy that's going to find that little open route to get it through to one of his forwards. So he's someone that you need to put pressure on. You can't give space because he's going to create magic. He's going to create danger. And he's a guy that I think is the star for Panama. So dangerous player, very, very dangerous player.
They can find a way through. They really can.
They can find a way through this group, you guys are saying?
I don't think they will. I said they can find a way.
Okay. Yeah. Like I said, I think the key
team from this group, aside from potentially Bolivia, but Panama is a tough team. Look at all the results USA against Panama over the past years. It's so up and down. So up and down. We've been beat by multiple goals by Panama. We've lost. We've beat them
in Panama or in a B team, not in an A team situation in the US.
Yeah, we'll just have to see. But now a team that obviously will give problems to any team, not just the US. In my opinion, this is one of the dark horses, if you want to say dark horses, to actually win this tournament, perhaps. But is Uruguay. And now you have, Fede Valverde, you have up front Darwin Nunez, you got some other studs that are through and through the team. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the difference between this team and Uruguayan teams of the past is that they have a midfield. They have Bentancur and Valverde, who together form a very creative attacking midfield that's unlike we've seen before in the past. Generally, Uruguay has played with primarily defensive midfielders and a forward line that goes 3 deep. Right, Forlan kind of dropped back into that number 10 role in the past. So they've been very strong in the back, very strong defensive midwise. But now they have creative midfielders in the center of the field, which is interesting. It means in some cases they're a little more open than I'm used to seeing from an Uruguayan team, so you can catch them, but they're also extremely dangerous. There are moments in that friendly against the U.S. where they were playing the U.S. off the field, and yet the U.S. was able to stay in that game. So it'll be interesting to see whether Uruguay is able to take the next step with a team that's very talented, and they're still good in the back. That hasn't changed, Roy.
Yeah, I think Uruguay is the team in this tournament. I hate that I pronounce it the American way. It's Uruguay. Uruguay is the team in this tournament that has the most pressure. They are expected to finally once and for all, relive their glory of the 1930s and the 1940s when they were truly an elite team in the world. They won a World Cup.
Well, you forget about the Suarez, Cavani. I mean, that they did win a Copa America, if you remember.
Yes, they won a Copa America, but on the global scale, I don't think they were perceived as a top footballing nation.
I mean, after South Africa, that was a great generation. That was a great team.
It was a great generation. Yes, it was a great generation. But would you have them in the same conversation as Brazil, France, Argentina? I don't think so. They were a level below, and Uruguay's in a weird middle ground between that second phase of teams in the world and that first level of teams in the world. They're in between, and they desperately want to get in that first category where they're talked about with France, with Argentina, with Brazil, etc., but they're simply not. And these tournaments are what's going to get them there. They have intense level of pressure on them. They have some of the best players in the world on their squad. And like you said, Rocky, this is one of the first times in history, for at least in the last 20, 30 years for Uruguay, where their strengths are in the attack, in their creativity, in their ability to create goal-scoring opportunities. They just beat Argentina. Exactly. So this is an excellent team. It's a phenomenal
Argentina
team.
In Argentina, by the way.
In La Bombonera. So this is a phenomenal attacking Uruguay team.
Yeah, I think
excellent coach in Bielsa.
I think one thing though, and this is the point that I think perhaps Rahi you were getting to, is they create the chances, but can Darwin Nunez finish them? Which is where he's always had trouble. You know, is an excellent player, obviously, but can he get it done? Can he actually put the ball in the net?
Yeah,
against the teams he's playing against, yes.
Well, but this is the difference I've seen. And the Argentina result was a typical Uruguayan performance where they kind of absorbed pressure and still scored when they needed to. But the past teams, the Uruguayan teams, created less and scored more. This team, I feel, creates more and scores less. But let's see if that may change this tournament.
Yeah, we'll see. So now finishing it off with, of course, if you can't tell from the jerseys that are being worn here, we have a rooting interest in this tournament. And of course, that is the United States of America.
My favorite team.
I guess let's talk very realistically based on the teams we've just mentioned. And we won't even get into analysis of the team as a whole because there's other videos we've done that in. What do you guys feel like? Where do we end up in this group? What should we end up? What's the story?
I mean, there's three scenarios. There's the status quo, which is we get second, and that's unacceptable in my opinion. There's a disaster, which is we don't get out of this group, and then there's the next step, and that's where we get first in this group, and that's what I expect us to do, and that's what I think Greg Berhalter has to do in order to keep his job. I think that's what this team has to do. Otherwise, no progress is regression.
Yeah. Roy, I want to ask you this. Based on the way the games are stacked up, Uruguay is our last game. Right? So how do you feel about that?
I don't like it because USA is a team that starts slow, especially when we're coming into tournaments, when we're coming into camps. The first game is oftentimes a bad game. It's one where we're watching and we're disgusted. We're watching and we're asking for Berhalter's head. We're watching and we're confused how half of these players are professional soccer players. That's the way I've seen the US play, where it is just such a miserable viewing experience. And oftentimes it's the first game. So it wasn't necessarily the case in the World Cup, but that's my worry, that we're going up against a team like Bolivia and then Panama, who we could struggle against. We have to be on our A game to get past these teams. We will not get past these teams on our C game, which is common. It's common for the U.S. to come out and play a C. It is, Rocky. You're telling me the U.S. typically comes out and plays a great game? That's the norm?
Roy, this schedule is perfectly set up for the U.S. You play your first two games against the inferior opponents, which means if you do what you should do, which is win both those games, you're set up with a great chance in that third game to put everything on the table and beat Uruguay. I think you grow into the tournament against opponents that aren't as good. And you go back to the World Cup, exactly your point. The first game, you play well for most of that game until the last 20 minutes, right? And then you give up a draw against Wales that changed the trajectory of the group, in my opinion. If you go into that second game, you get the draw against England, then it's a little bit different, right? I mean, England, in retrospect, would end up getting first regardless. But I think the point is you have a chance to win your first 2 games and get some points out of it. And then all or nothing. But also, you're already qualified in that third game.
They're must-win games. That's my problem. The first 2 games are must-win
you
games
should win
because
them.
Uruguay is so much better than we are.
But we have to be able to win these games.
Yeah. Okay. So who gets
You're
out? Who
talking
gets out of the
fantasy
group, and
land, Rocky.
in what order? Boys.
Group C. Oh man, I'm gonna be realistic, and I'm gonna put my fan brain aside because I know Rocky's gonna put his fan brain in the frontal cortex, and that's what's gonna dictate his ranking here. Uruguay is number 1. Uruguay is number 1.
Okay.
If they're not number 1, this is a huge disaster for the nation of Uruguay. This is completely against the grain. You look at paper, there's no way Uruguay should lose against a team like the US or Panama or Bolivia. Uruguay, USA, I'm going to put Bolivia number 3, Panama number 4.
Okay. Right.
You know who wins this group? The US wins this group, and not because they beat Uruguay, but because they tied that last game. And by virtue of having more goals against Bolivia and Panama, I think that's how we got through.
I hope so, my friend.
So I think that's what happens. And by the way, I don't think it's a disaster for Uruguay because I like Uruguay's chances against Brazil in the quarterfinals.
Okay.
So that's what I believe will happen. I believe the US has to find a way to win this group. And I do believe we will.
Yeah. I agree with you. I'm going to go with Rahi. I'm going to go with USA wins on a tie with Uruguay, and we win the group, and Uruguay obviously gets second. And then I agree with Bolivia and Panama after that in that order. Okay. Very quickly, we're going to do a fun little segment going team by team. Who is the most famous person for Bolivia? I have Evo Morales, the famous president, who's still around, not as president, but influence still is forever there for all Bolivians. Next, let's go to Panama. Who we got for this?
Who you got, Rocky?
I think you got to go baseball. I mean, I think you got to go baseball, and the
Probably.
most famous baseball player is the Sandman himself, Mariano Rivera, of New York Yankees fame, won all those World Series with those teams. Maybe not as internationally well known, but I think he's got to be the one.
Okay. And then Uruguay. Who we going with Uruguay, boys, Roy?
Uruguay, I'm going to go with El Milagro de los Andes, the entire rugby team that whose plane crashed in the Andes. Go watch the movie on Netflix. It's a phenomenal, heart-wrenching movie, what they've been through. They're legends in Uruguay. They're loved. They are the Uruguayan spirit encapsulated of survival, of bravery, of winning against all odds. I'm going to go with them.
Nice. There we go. And then finishing it off, of course. Wow.
Well, if you talk about bravery and spirit, there's only one person this can be. It was for a while. I would have, up until this last year, I would have said Mr. Barack Obama, but it's got to be none other than the global superstar herself, Miss Taylor Swift. There is no debating that. That's who we'd put up to win this group for us.
Obama and Swift.
She can go 4 hours in a concert.
What a duo.
That's what is that, like 2.5 soccer games? More than that?
Well, Swift is your favorite American. Speak for yourself.
Who's your favorite American, Roy, besides yourself?
Besides myself, damn it. You're going to have to come back to me on that one.
All right, we'll come back in another video. So for now, it's T Swift with her tickets and in terms of if it was the price of a concert ticket, I think Taylor Swift might be the only ticket that's more expensive than Copa America, by the way. So these Copa America tickets are exorbitant. But anyhow, we'll be covering the tournament in full. If you're enjoying these videos, please subscribe to the channel. Group C, there's our preview, and we'll be doing the other remaining groups, which is Group D, later. So everyone out there, go USA and watch the Copa America.